So this is the fly here, and just to give you a wee bit of a run through of the materials. In the tail we've got bucktail, and also added into that is some fluro fibre, orange fluro fibre, which gives a wee bit of just a wee bit of extra movement, but also just a wee bit of bling to added attraction. And then as you can maybe see here, we've got the orange Arctic fox, and that's a slightly softer material above the bucktail, and that just helps to get a wee bit of extra movement. And also it's fairly short, so it doesn't wrap around the hooks, but it also just gives a wee bit of a sort of a hot spot around the hook area. So I like to do that. And it's got silver, flat silver body, black floss wing, and then the two hackles, and that's the Firetail Cascade. Alright. Okay, right, let's get started. As you can maybe see here, the hook we're going to tie on is a Salar. This is a silver Salar. I think Salars, because they're relatively short shanked hook, they're good for certain types of flies, particularly hair-wing patterns, and I think they work very well with the Cascade, so that's why I tie most of my Cascades on Salars. And you get the different colours, silver, black or gold. Because it's going to be silver Cascade, we'll just use a silver hook to complement it. Okay, well that's ready to go. And in terms of our tying thread, what we're going to use start off with is UTC white, and that's size 70. And really the reason why we want to do that, we're going to be tying in a green, fluorescent green floss butt. So you need to use a light tying thread, because once that gets wet, if you had dark tying thread underneath it, it would actually show up, it would dull the colour. So always use a lighter tying thread if you're using floss. So literally just start tying that in, just a couple turns to wrap it off. And then what we want to do is just to tie in the fluorescent green floss for the tag. And what I want to do is, because this is fairly fine floss, just to thicken it up a wee bit, I'm just going to double it, and that just helps to just fewer turns. So that's us there. So we tie that in and tie it down to where you want the tag to start, and then again we come up until we're level with the hook points. If you tied your tail any further back, because the hook is naturally sloping down, your tail will actually slope down. So you want it level. Normally the straight part of the shank is level with the hook. So if you tie it in there, your tail will go straight, which is what you want. So literally we're just going to tie in the green tag, and as I said, as you can see, because I have because I've doubled the floss, it just makes it tie on with fewer turns. Keeping the floss below the hook, and that's basically our floss tag, fluorescent green. The green butt Cascade is a fly. I first sort of heard about it in the River Moy, down in Ballina. It was very, very popular, and it seems to have really just increased in popularity all over Ireland and even further afield. I think it just acts as a additional trigger point. But that's the tag. You can actually, well, it's called the green butt Cascade, and actually, strictly speaking, if it's a green butt, the butt actually should tie in your tail and then the green butt. But so this is a tag rather than a butt. But this is the way I tie it, and it just helps to well, speeds things up, but it also helps to keep the tail at the right angle. So what we're going to do now is tie in the tail, and in the Cascade it's bucktail. It's a mixture of orange and yellow mixed together, and I'll spend a wee bit of time just showing you how to do that. With bucktails, the sort of bucktail you want is one that's quite soft and quite fine, and also personal preference, but I generally like to have it straight, nice and straight, rather than very crinkly. You can actually get an iron or your better half's hair straighteners and straighten it out. But ideally, if you can choose one, hand pick one that's actually very straight. I don't know if you can see that, but that's very straight. You also find in the bucktail the fibres along the bottom tend to be the straightest. Sometimes the thickest, but they are also the straightest. So that's generally the ones that I would use. So what I would normally do is just get a small pinch of bucktail, and then I cut that. And then what I want to do is just to tape. Some people put these in hair stackers, but I prefer to work with it by hand. So what I'm doing is just evening out, and any ones that are particularly, any fibres that are particularly wayward, shall we say, I take those out. That's a nice straight and tapered body, or tapered orange tail. That's us ready to go. So that's the orange. I'll just set that aside for a moment. And now we're doing the same thing with the yellow, and again, yellow bucktail. And what I'm going to do is to choose again another bit here that is nice and straight. And it's just really trying to find fibres that are relatively straight. It's a bit crinkly. A bit straight on this side. So there we go. And again, do the same thing. If we just take out the any bits that are different sizes, sort of small, short ones. And sometimes just do that with that's pretty much ready to go. And then what I do is I mix that with the orange. So just put it together, and then just with your fingers, 2 fingers, just roll it. And if you roll it at the top, so as you actually mix it. And as I say, some people use a hair stacker, but I like to taper it and do it by hand. So once you're happy that you've mixed it, then really what you want to do is just to check to see how heavy a tail you want. And that's us ready to go. Okay, so we're ready just to tie that in, and yeah, it's about 1.5 times the body of the fly. The other thing with bucktail, it does have a tendency, I suppose it's really the same thing as when you're spinning deer hair. It's very similar. So if you put a lot of tension to begin with on it, you'll find that it'll actually it'll spray out. So whenever you're first tying it in, do light turns until you get it tied in, and then once you do, you can cut it, or you can tie it down sort of firmer. Okay, that's our bucktail. And then I always like to put a wee bit of flash or some sort of bling into the tail. And what I have here is it's fluro fibre, which is a very nice material. It's fluorescent, so it does give that wee bit of extra edge to the tail. But fluro fibre also is very fine, so it actually doesn't interfere with the natural movement of the material. So it's a nice material to work with. So generally what I would do is get sort of 3 or 4 strands and just pull those out. And then you just cut those off, and then just lock those in. So lock it underneath, and again I always tie it in shorter to start with, and then I'm going to double it back a couple of turns to lock it in, and then just pull it back and tie it in. So there you go. So it's not a lot of material, and then because this is a Firetail Cascade, really what I wanted to do with it is to put in a softer material above the bucktail. Bucktail's got plenty of movement, but sometimes I think that if you put a wee bit of a softer material just above the bucktail, it just helps to get a wee bit of extra movement, and also it's an extra sort of hot point. And I don't tend to have it too long. If you had it too long, it would be sort of liable to wrap around the hooks. So it's just a wee short piece of, in this case it's Arctic Fox. So we're just going to tie it above the bling. So literally just tie that in with your nail. Just flatten it out so it's even around the hook. And that's us. And then we'll just tie that off.